guest is here as well, Teddi the drag queen. Morning! Hello!
Morning!
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm just listening to Adam Lambert there. Are you a big fan of Adam Lambert?
I love Adam Lambert. I think as well what's great about him is that he's inexcusably queer. So everything about him sort of went from when he came out to, you know, now he's just sort of gotten queerer and queerer as the years have gone on. And actually that representation is really important. So, and also what a voice. Like, just has the most incredible voice. And my mum and dad were really lucky enough to go and see Adam with Queen. I think the first time they did it, and they just said they just invoked Freddie so much. So the spirit of Freddie, I think, is inside Adam Lambert as well as sort of going along and sort of making it queer as well. And I think that's interesting actually that they chose Adam as well, because there's lots of singers that can do Freddie, but I think it has to come from a queer, authentic place as well, because that's really important. Freddie was a gay man, you know, he wasn't a straight person. He yes, he had children, and yes, obviously if you watch the film he had a full-on relationship, but really he was a gay man, and that was and that's really good that they are pushing that forward and moving that still on and having that representation there, because that's really important.
Adam talked about the importance of pride, and he gave me a really good answer, I think, to what pride means to him. So maybe, you know, John and I are interested from your perspective. We're in that season of pride events around the whole country, and we'll talk about what's going on in Peterborough in a few minutes. But what would you say, Teddi, does pride mean to you?
So pride means to me the day itself, or the celebration itself. It means that you can be yourself and you don't have to worry about, you know, dimming your light for other people to feel comfortable. You can be irrevocably yourself, and you can be out there, and you can, you know, if you want to dress as a 7-foot female, you can do, or if you want to come in your full rainbow regalia, you can do. It's just all about being who you are. I think that's the big part about pride, that people don't necessarily get, is that when you go into spaces, and we're in Peterborough, so let's talk about Peterborough spaces. So when you go into Wetherspoons, if you're a queer person, and I use queer as a collective term for the entire LGBTQIA+ community, you have to dim yourself, you have to dim your light in order to fit in. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that because it's something that they've never had to do, especially if you're, you know, a cis straight white male. I don't think you probably ever had to enter a space where you can't be your full self. Or if you have, it's because you've entered a space that is dominated by somebody else. So whether that be a predominantly female space or a predominantly queer space. But I think that's the big thing about pride, is the fact that you can be yourself and you can put everything out on the table, which I think is very rare for our community to be able to do, especially if you live in a conservative town like we do.
It's really interesting just hearing that. Having to dim who you are. And like, if you go back 10 years, well, even further, go back to the 80s, that must have been awful for so many people in our community.
And I think a lot of people are critical are those that have never actually been to a Pride event. And one of my favourite events in 2021 was the Pride Festival in Cathedral Square. Psychologically, after COVID, I thought it was really important for that square to be used for something anyway. Yeah. That was a great day, really, and the wedding that took place at Cathedral, the cathedral. Oh my goodness! I didn't
go, but it sounded like one big party.
Oh, it was great, and it was just like everyone was happy. Yeah, everyone was enjoying themselves, and it was just such an event to make you smile, and that's my memory of it anyway.
But Teddi, going back to what you were saying about, you know, Pride stands for not having to dim who you are as a person, but being able to literally be whoever you want to be, whoever that is. Would you say that prejudice still exists in Peterborough towards the community? I mean, you're laughing. Is that a yes?
I think we know what the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I was walking to a gig the other day, and somebody had some choice words for me as I was walking past, just minding my own business. And so yeah, there is, and there also is a great deal of prejudice in Peterborough, but I think again that's because we live in a conservative town. We still probably have some viewpoints that think we should go back to the likes of the 50s. I'm here to tell you that ain't ever going to happen, darling. You've got to, and this is the big thing that people don't necessarily understand, is that you can sit there and you can be a stick in the mud and you can not want it to happen and not want it to change, and you can say that it was better back then and blah, 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 blah. But the generations that are coming up, especially Gen Zs, who are potentially some of these people's grandchildren or children or whatever, nephews, nieces, whatever, they aren't allowing you to not accept it, because, if I'm incredibly lucky. I was born in the 90s, so I sort of missed a large part of Section 28. It was still around when I was at school, but I missed a large part of Section 28 and a large part of the AIDS crisis. I was too young to really understand it. But I have friends who very luckily were able to come through that and survived and thrived. But even then, you still have that kind of thing of, the prejudice is still massive. It's probably not as bad as what it was back then. But then again, it's just, if you then look at, I personally feel that's towards probably gay people, or people who identify as gay. If you look at how trans people are being dealt with, it's probably exactly the same level of prejudice they were getting back then. And that's sort of the next frontier. When we talk about sort of prejudice, we need to be thinking of the community as a whole. And I very much think, it's fine that if you accept one part, and that's fantastic, but actually you need to accept the community as a whole for it to really, truly be moving forward. And right now, especially trans people and non-binary people, I'm a non-binary person myself, they are, they're just not there with the same level of rights as other people. And again, like we've just said about Pride, we're just trying to be who we are and try to live authentically, which is really difficult when you, when people have these sort of prejudiced views. And the funny thing about Peterborough is, and Cambridgeshire in a whole, we have the second largest queer community in the country and one of the largest trans communities in the country as well. So it's interesting. I can actually really link it back to, there was a separate study done by I believe it was a government source, but I can't remember what it's called, but I'll find it for you. We are the third highest homophobic city in the country. Transphobic as well.
Just come in there. So third highest homophobic rates in the whole country, and yet second in terms of
the community itself.
The community, the size of the community itself. That's astonishing.
Yeah. I mean, so the third highest homophobic and transphobic. That's specifically about Peterborough, but it's Cambridgeshire as a whole. So you would have, Cambridge would also be in there, and there'd be the other cities around it. But it's really interesting to think that Peterborough has that sort of title. I mean, that study was done 2019 before, so it would be interesting to look at that study and see if it's changed at all, and hopefully Pride has helped sort of break those barriers, and the work that I've been doing going into straight spaces and doing my drag bingos and cabarets and all.
I want to talk about that in a minute, because I know the drag bingos are so popular and people are really loving it. At the date of recording, we're recording this on the 19th of June. The weekend just gone, Cambridge had its big Pride event. Peterborough has its Pride event this coming Saturday, June the 24th. In a nutshell, what's going to happen on June the 24th and where?
So we kick off our day at 1:00, and that's our parade and our main celebration. So sometimes it depends. So Prides in general either have their march on the same day, or sometimes they have them separate. But we have ours on the same day. So our march goes from Stanley Rec Park all the way through town to the Green Backyard, and then our main celebration is at the Green Backyard. And in a nutshell, it's just going to be a very fun event. We have 98% is black and brown performers. We like to program minorities of a minority, because we have a massive population of black and brown people who are queer, that don't feel as though they can come to the forefront. So we try and program that to make again, we go back to representation. Representation matters. So seeing people on stage, maybe they will feel more accustomed, more comfortable, and they will be able to come out more and be a part of the community more. And also as well, everybody on our main stage is trans and non-binary. Again, like I've said earlier, all about those rights. Again, we want to put those at the forefront for our Pride. So it's just going to be a camp old day. We've got voguers. If you've ever seen Pose on BBC, we've got voguers, we've got singers, we've got cabaret acts, we've got so much. It's just all, it's just sort of everything about the queer community is there.
It's Armed Forces Day, obviously on Saturday as well. And I was in a committee meeting the other day with the Armed Forces team. They are so looking forward to the Pride coming through. They're going to stop performing.
Is in Cathedral Square.
Yes.
So is the march going to go through Cathedral Square? So will there
Yeah,
be like a moment?
They are hoping so.
So how we do it, because again the cathedral's a very big landmark for Peterborough, and they've always been very, very supportive. They've flown the flag ever since the first Pride we've done. They've flown it even during COVID as well. And at the top of their building, and being a big religious centre like they are, that's massive for the community, because there is obviously religious queers. Religion is in every part of the community, as is in general, as is queer people. So we always make sure that we like to do a little remembrance moment at the cathedral, and then we sort of move through the cathedral archway, and then obviously, like John's just said, we are going to go round the Armed Forces Day celebration that's in the Cathedral Square. So it will be sort of a part of it. It will be really fun.
I just imagine the moment when the procession goes into Cathedral Square, the Armed Forces guys, and it's just going to be a beautiful kind of collaboration,
contrast
coming
and collaboration.
together.
Brilliant
At the moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, also as well, I think naturally, and again, this comes from a progressive movement. There is queer people everywhere.
Yeah.
And, in our armed forces, in our fire services, in our police, in our nursing, in our doctors, so really when the question was asked to us, I passed it on to my parade lead, because I can't deal with everything. So I mainly deal with the celebration, and then Brian deals with our parade, who's our vice chair. I just said, if we can do it logistically, I think it would be a very nice touch, especially as in London, you see the armed forces, the fire service and all that join the parade. We aren't there just yet with our parade. There is a few people in our community that think that those sort of services should be separate, shouldn't be in the parade. That's where our community sits with it. And that's sort of quite internal and private for them. It would be great to have the parade sort of circle round Cathedral Square and then go around St John's Church, then back on themselves again. So that would be really nice touch.
Let's talk about you. Let's talk about Teddi.
My favourite subject.
Tell us about some of the things that you do as a performer. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do, because I know that you're a bit of a, I don't know, someone that I think beautifully stands under the spotlight and entertains and performs. So give us a bit of insight.
Yeah,
to that.
so I guess really my performing journey started here in Peterborough. I was part of KYT, and it was my dad that realised that I had a lot of energy and I needed to channel that energy. Sports wasn't my thing, so my dad thought that potentially the other way would be, well, let's put them into the arts, and really saved my life, because being a queer kid in the 90s weren't great. So having that outlet and having so many examples of successful queer people really helped me as a person.
Who like?
So Michael Cross probably is the biggest example.
Great
Cross, what a guy for this city. Not just his work at the Key Theatre, but just generally. He was so passionate about Peterborough, wasn't he?
And also as well, a successful, talented person who I think really also still to this day informs me and my drag, because again, probably they were the first person that I saw in drag as a dame, and thought, wow, isn't that amazing? I'd love to do that. And then sort of that sort of glam has then hopefully transferred over in some of my looks, because you obviously do have different styles of drag. It's not just one, you don't just have one style, but yeah, for me, they were very, very big representation. No nonsense, direct, incredibly professional, talented, and also great to look at. Just visually, always had the beautiful costuming, always had, even when they were playing the dowdy Mother Goose, somehow there was a glam moment for them. So, which was just brilliant. And I remember being because I did Mother Goose with Michael, and I remember it was all UV. And I was part of the oyster that ate the Mother Goose, and then they came out in a full glam outfit. I just thought, that's brilliant.
What about other famous people who present themselves so brilliantly and so talented, with such talent? Who else inspired you?
I mean, well, I think really as well, apart from just famous people, but my mum and her sisters, they all from Spalding, very fierce, independent women, and I think that's where I've got a lot of my courageousness from. Let's say that I'm not shy to tell people what I think, and having that sort of strong female representation, and because I wasn't doing the sports, I wasn't with the boys, I was always with the females sitting on the side. So
they were like role models.
Yeah, very, very, very much so. Very, very much so. And you know. Yeah, I mean, I remember having an 18th birthday party, and my mum is one of the younger children. My mum is one of 13, so she's one of the younger ones, and it was a fancy dress theme, and they all came dressed up. All my mum's sisters came dressed up as sort of iconic women like Marilyn Monroe and Dorothy and all those kind of things. So it's always lovely to see. They've always supported me and always had my back, which is great. So yeah, but of celebrities, obviously you have to talk about RuPaul, Lily Savage as well. You know, I'm so sad that we lost them earlier this year. And then other people, you know, Danny LaRue as well. Always,
Danny LaRue?
Yeah,
your age.
Yeah, well, they had the best, personally for me, and I think actually really, if you're talking about the drag community, they had the best costuming, the best jewels, the best hair. There's nothing that could, you know, nothing that's ever compared to them. They were literally head to toe in like a diamond or a sequin, and you just couldn't compare. And then obviously you talk about sort of more modern age people. So, you know, Cheddar Gorgeous, for instance, from Manchester. She's a beautiful visual artist. You've also got, you know, the Vivian as well, who won the first season of UK Drag Race. Really for me, it's more the theatrical types, because that's where I come from, you know, all the way throughout theatre. You know, I started when I was 7. Stayed at KIT till I was 20, then went off to London, did some training, came back because my brother had a child, and I was like, I want to be a part of that life, because
so that's where you came back to Peterborough.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Well, there is a little bit. So I was auditioning to be a professional and everything else, and I was getting gigs and they were fine, but they were very poorly paid. And I remember one of my acting tutors said to me, "Oh, if you just wait till you're about 35, which is 3 years, in 3 years I'll be 35, then you'll be on the West End, you'll be this, you'll be that." And I said, well, what am I going to do for the next 12 years? I can't not eat. And living in London as well, you know, the wage that I was earning, I was working to live instead of living to work. Yeah. So well, and also as well, like everything was very expensive, and for me, I had a very independent like self drive that I said I don't want to ask my parents for money every month to top up myself, you know, because they're working as well. My mum and dad's business is very successful, but you know, also as well, like I don't want a handout, I want to earn it myself. So there was a few things that went on, and then I came back to Peterborough when my first niece was born, and that's sort of when I realised that actually the work, yes, it does need to be done in London, but you've got 12,000 people or however many people that live in London that are already doing that. Here in Peterborough, who is it? So
who is it? It's no one, right?
It's very.
I think it's you, Teddy.
Yeah, it's
I
very.
think you are it.
Yeah, no,
the
there's
one.
me. There are others. We have a full committee at Pride. I do head it up, but that's when I started to join. And the first iteration of the Pride committee, there were 6 of us. So there was 6 people, and now we've grown to a size of 11, which is great. And you don't want everybody on there because committees. If you've ever sat on them, you don't need everybody's opinion. And sometimes it's a bit of a talking shop. And my opinion is this and my opinion is that, which is great, but also as well, your opinion is valid, wonderful. However, sometimes isn't needed in that precise moment. We'll come back for that and we'll talk about that and we'll discuss that later on at a later date. But
all opinions are equal, but some opinions are more equal than others.
yeah.
Very good. Animal Farm.
Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Animal Farm.
The book, by the way.
Teddy, listen, we're almost out of time. We could sit here and talk.
We could
all day long, but I know that we wanted to sort of get to a question about events that you go as Teddy the drag queen as. I mean, we mentioned already the bingo. Can you just outline a little bit more of the wonderful events that you host?
Yeah, so I'm every month I'm at the chalkboard doing their bingo nights. So we have 2 types of bingo, which is normal standard bingo, which is 2 and 4, 24, blah, blah, blah. And then we also do musical bingo, which is musical hits. And then I also do cabaret shows, so that could be singing spots, so 2:45s or 1:45. I can also just host events, so I've hosted burlesque evenings and everything like that. Anything to do in the arts, I can probably do. I can find someone to do it for you. I also run a production company called Q Productions. We were very lucky to do Peterborough Celebrates Festival and host the Saturday evening for Peterborough Celebrates Festival as well. And we're looking to do more events in and around the city to promote queer people, because that's who we hire. We hire just queer people, because our motto is pay the queers, which is
Pay the queers.
That's what people should do.
It is, yeah.
Have you got any questions? I just feel like I'm hogging all of the
No,
questions.
I think you've done very well as an interviewer today, Kev.
Thank you.
Yeah.
very much, Mr. John Baker.
How do you see it going then in the future in Peterborough?
Well, hopefully. I mean, the great thing I've seen is that there is a growing youth movement. Now, whether that means that the youth will have their own pride that they need to manage, maintain and deliver, because obviously I'm 32, so I don't know what an 18-year-old would want now. I know what I wanted when I was 18, but again, different. So I think really, my hope is, and I can see it will get better, and we will have more equality, and there'll be more of those people that don't, let's just say, agree in inverted commas with it, will slowly realise that actually it's not anything scary, and that's the big thing. I think a lot of this prejudice comes from the fact that they don't know, and
it's education. It's breaking down barriers. It's changing perceptions.
Exactly. Well, it's like Peterborough Celebrates Festival. We had a lady come up to us and say, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I've never witnessed anything. I've only read what I've read on sort of Facebook, and actually, it isn't that scary. And I think that's the big thing. Like,
well, you're a great ambassador
people.
for that. You're a great ambassador because you are so friendly. You are so warm, approachable, and you're someone that is. Am I right in saying this? You will talk to anyone.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the big thing for me also as well is that so you have to allow people to educate themselves. Like my parents were born in the 60s, so they were told every day that being queer, being gay, doing what I do was wrong, demonized and everything else. They've had to go out and educate themselves because they've got somebody, and they've done that, and they've done that really well. And I think that if I demanded that they knew everything about me and understood everything in a matter of hours, that's never going to happen.
It's unrealistic.
Well, exactly. And I mean, obviously, there are obviously constraints to that. So if I've educated you 3 times or tried to educate you 3 times and you're still being a fool, then guess what, darling? You're then an ignorant person and I don't need to talk to you anymore. But I think that's a big part of the community where there is a lot of people that demand people to know instantly, whereas actually our landscape is moving so fast. If you think 5 years ago, we weren't talking about pronouns the way that we're talking about pronouns now. We're not talking about non-binary people as we're talking about them now. We're not talking about trans people the way that we're talking about them now. Our landscape has shifted so much in a short space of time. Even people in the community have to catch up. So if people in the community can't catch up, how are you expecting people that have no education or have never been in any of that situation. And that's a big part of it. So when people talk about, and this is in America, hopefully it's not going to be coming over here, but we do like to follow suit with America. When people talk about banning books and banning representation and banning, you know, this, that, and everything else, you have to realize that there is a little kid somewhere that, just like me, you look at the TV, you look at the books that are being out there and you go, well, where am I? And that's the big piece. It's not about anything else. It's where am I? Where is that, you know, larger than life character? Because they're not on TV as much as they should be. You know, you get one family maybe, and this goes not just for queer rights, but you're talking about black people, you're talking about brown people, you're talking about women, you're talking about any minority, and you know that is very, very important that you have the right representation in the right places.
Teddi, it's been a joy to chat to you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for being our guest on the Peterborough podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much.